Hello, hello. We are live, and I have a special guest for you today. Theresa Conroy is joining me, and she is incredible. She's an incredible writer who writes about the French experience. And I can't wait for you to meet her. But before we do that, I see we have some people who have joined us already. And please let me know if you can hear me by telling me where you are joining us from. All right. And while you do that, I am going to introduce myself. I'm Patricia Brooks, and I am an American expat living in the south of France, and I have been for 6 years. It's 6.5 years now, and it's incredible for me to say that. And now I help people who are ready to start the next chapters of their lives living in a foreign country. I help them move through their fear and self doubt so that they can finally stop dreaming about it and start living that dream. And I'm so excited to be here and to bring you Theresa Conroy, who 2 years ago, I believe, moved from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania to Rennes. And she shares her experience on her blog, Yo France. And like I said, it's amazing. So I'm going to let her introduce herself a little bit more. And I'm not seeing any comments. Anybody commenting? No. All right. Can you hear us? Let me know you can hear us. All right, good. Bob Warner, an old friend and colleague of Teresa's listening in Philadelphia. All right, good. All right. That makes me feel better. Go ahead, Teresa. Share a little bit about yourself and why you decided to make the move to France.
Well, Bob gives me a good entree in that we were colleagues together at the Philadelphia Daily News, where I worked as a reporter. And my last beat was covering criminal court in Philadelphia. My husband, that's where I met my husband as well. He was a general assignment reporter and also our beer columnist for many years. And it was actually through kind of a strange story, but through a murder story that I covered for the Daily News, which brought me back to France in 1997. And I remembered how much I loved it from my first visit as a teen, and also needed to continue following this story, which lasted about 5 years, and recognized immediately that my high school French wasn't going to cut it. So in 1997, when I came back to Philadelphia after that assignment, I started French school. And I've been taking French consistently ever since.
Wow. That's commitment.
That was commitment. I really loved it. And my husband and I started to come to France pretty much yearly. I met some people through that story that I became friendly with. And our love of France grew and grew. It began with, gee, wouldn't it be nice if we bought a little apartment so we'd have a place to stay when we came? To wouldn't it be nice if we could move there? By the time we moved, I had switched careers from newspaper reporting to be a yoga therapist specializing in Parkinson's disease. So that took me way outside of writing. I actually, during that, 16, 17 years, I don't think I wrote anything much more than a shopping list. But my husband and I decided that we would like to kind of keep our experiences or our communication with our friends and family back in Philadelphia about our life here in France off of not just do it with Facebook posts. So we decided to start a Substack blog, and it was really created just to update my mother-in-law, and but I guess we couldn't help have our tabloid journalism. We worked at the Philadelphia Daily News, which was this tabloid, not a newspaper tabloid, but just the shape like the New York Post kind of place with a lot of attitude, and whose feature section, by the way, was called Yo, which is where the name of Yo France comes. So Yo is kind of like, a greeting in Philadelphia, yo. So we called the blog Yo, like Rocky, Yo Adrian. So we called our blog Yo France, and we've been I guess using our journalism experience and love of writing to as a guide to the changes in our lives and to give other people perspective.
And I'll tell you, yeah, I have my door open. I'm sitting here reading your blogs and I'm laughing out loud. I'm like, oh yeah, she hit that one on the head. It's really amusing. If you have not yet read any of her blogs or subscribed to her Substack, this is how you can do it. yofrance.substack.com. All right, let's see who else is joining us, and then we're going to jump in and we're going to talk about a couple of the articles that really spoke to me. We've got B, and we've got, hi, Natina, you're taking a break from the modules. Yes, okay, that's allowed. Bridget Smith and Maya, and we've got Junket 3000, and hi Dion, good to see you here. All right, so I think that there was one article or one blog post that you wrote, and it was called "Jousting at the Marché." Oh, I'm going to butcher this. Market, Marché, something like that. And people think of France and they think of markets, right? And that is kind of a part of the allure of France, is going to the market and getting fresh produce and just having tastes of things. And can you share why you decided you were going to write that blog post and how the markets have impacted your life here?
Yeah. Well, the weekly Saturday market here in Rennes is the second largest in France. I actually don't know what the largest is, but anyway, second largest in France. It's huge. It's amazing. It's set in, actually it's called, the jousting part is a reference to the fact that when there was the plague was going on here, the 1600s, the government was afraid of having it spread inside the walls of the walled city at that time. So they moved the marché outside to where they had jousting tournaments, and it's called marché aux lices, and the lices were the lists of people jousting. So they moved it outside to this area, and it's just amazing. You walk there on a Friday or on a Sunday, and it's just a lot of open space. And on Saturday, it is so alive. It's unbelievable, and crowded and noisy and exhilarating. And those of you who travel to France a lot know that you kind of that's an experience. It's an experience. It's a window into the culture of France to go. It's one of the things we loved and were excited about when we moved, because we have a smaller refrigerator. I don't have a lot of storage space in cabinets. It's not like I go to Costco like I used to do in the US and round up all my stuff. I go food shopping 3 or 4 times a week, get fresh things. So the marché became something important for us to get our cheese, our fish, vegetables, fruit, the best of everything. And kind of I went into it like, okay, here's our list: lemons, limes, salmon, whatever. And I went into it almost as a chore and started to realize immediately that I don't know what I'm doing in the market. I don't know where I can touch the food, who gives you a bag, who is nice, who takes credit cards, how
Let's
you
talk
go
about
about
that.
it.
Sometimes you can't touch the fruit or
That's right.
vegetables.
So it depends on the vendor. Some vendors want to pick it for you. They don't want a bunch of people touching and picking through things. So I went at this like, I'm not touching a lime, I'm just not touching. But then I start to see some vendors hand out little plastic baskets, and you can go fill up your plastic baskets with whatever you want. But I would wait until I was told it was okay to touch, because I didn't know.
I had yelled at one time.
Yeah, really. It's like, yes, you get yelled at one time, like the time you don't say bonjour first, and you never do it again. So I was in a no touch mode, but it was crowded. There were queues. there's vegetables that I've never even seen in my life before, different fruit, mushrooms, like a whole table of mushrooms. So, and also in the metric system, like, they're weighing everything in grams. So I had to figure out how to survive in the beginning. And the way I survived, I speak French, and my husband is learning French. So he carries the cart, he wheels the cart, takes care of the money, and I negotiate and order. And he kind of pays attention to prices. And so there's a lot to do. So we had to split up the duties.
And
I
it's
couldn't
crowded,
handle it.
right?
It's crowded. There's the guy playing the guitar, and how can you not listen? Because he plays the same songs all the time. And when he gets to Michael Jackson's Beat It with a French accent, you can't even listen to anything else, So I had to put it all together, and it took me weeks and weeks to start to not be overwhelmed there. And once I felt like I could handle the purchasing and find things, and I started to find like the olive guy that I liked and the cheese vendor that
Yeah.
I preferred. When I started to find that, then I could look at what was really happening. And when I'm standing in line, I'm listening to what people say. I'm in that wonderful mushroom line, and I want to add mushrooms to pasta, and I don't know how much to get. So I just start eavesdropping on everybody. And, the guy in front of me wants 250 grams of mushrooms. I don't know. That could fill a trunk for all I know. But I watch the woman put them in there, and I go, that's 2 people. That's good for, what I'm making. So it became a way to peek surreptitiously at the inner workings of French culture.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it
Well,
it has become really important to us to be there. And,
yeah,
you know,
it is. I am not a big market person just because of the crowd, right? I'm
mm,
that, if I go early. Um, but you said that you were in survival mode in the beginning, and you were just like, okay, I just need to get some stuff so that we can have something to eat. And you weren't really absorbing the experience of it, right?
mhm,
And
mhm.
how long did it take for you to move through survival mode and get to a place where now you're eavesdropping on the conversations that are happening, that you're kind of taking in, okay, 250 grams of mushrooms, that's about what we need, that those sorts of things.
I would say probably in the 4 to 6 month range.
Mhm.
I was able to not just figure out how to navigate it, but also find, it was overwhelming to me to have 9 stands selling strawberries. And also, by the way, if you ask them to tell you about the strawberries, they'll say, these are known for their aroma. These are very sweet. These aren't as sweet, but they are, fruity. There's you know, so it took, I guess, about 4 to 6 months until I felt comfortable enough to start to notice other things.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
You mentioned in that article about how, one of the things that people who are, want to move to France or want to move to Europe is that they are looking to have a slower pace of life, a
Mhm,
better balance. And one of the things that you wrote about in that blog post was, well, about a woman who is in line and she's talking about what recipe, right?
mhm,
Can you
mhm.
share a little bit about that experience? Because I had a similar experience, and as an American, it was hard for me not to be anxious or in a hurry.
Mhm. Yeah, that it really struck me. First of all, I I paid a lot of attention to the older people, and I would seem to strike up conversations with them, which is wonderful because they don't use slang. They speak a very clear French. They're cute usually, and you can't, when you're. I was standing in line once, and the woman behind me said, I'm 86 years old. Like, that's the kind of thing, of course, you're going to have a conversation with that lady, but also she's kind of not bickering, but she's kind of having a back and forth maybe with the vendor. she's a little picky about the, what the quality, and maybe a little picky about the price. And then she might want to talk about how she prepares that. And one thing that really has struck me is the patience that the French people have. Like, that then she will take out her coin purse and she will painstakingly count the coins out. And she'll take out her little wrinkled up paper bag, and that's what she wants them to put it in. And nobody starts steaming. Like I would be like, oh my gosh, I want to say the, oh la la, hurry up, but nobody does. And everybody, I think there's a respect for the older person, but I also think they're not as in a hurry as we might be. And that was wonderful, because that gave me the opportunity to eavesdrop again, or even ask questions like, how do you make that? How do you clean that thing? That gnarly root vegetable. And to get time to talk to somebody and to learn something as well was pretty phenomenal.
Yeah. Yeah. I experienced something similar. I think I was standing in line at the nut stand, and there were 4 or 5 other people in front of me. And it was an older man who knew the vendor, right? And was just having this conversation, this casual conversation as we're waiting. And as you said, nobody was in a hurry or looking at their watches or huffing and puffing. They were just waiting. They're like, this is normal. And I was at the back of the line thinking, oh my God. What's going on
Exactly. And just to underscore that, these are a huffing and puffing people. I mean, these are the, I mean, they just are, they make all those, you know what I mean? The, like, they do that all the time, but not with those old people in line.
You got that down.
Oh, yeah. It's like the other part of the French language. Bah. Yeah.
I want to ask our audience if you've experienced the French market, and if any of this rings true for you. Let us know in the comments. Because I want to move on to something that you were talking about a little bit about the weights and measures, right? You wrote another phenomenal blog post called Kilometers of Olives.
A kilometer of olives. Yeah. Which is a kind of a joke my husband and I have, because I'm so bad at the metric system, having never learned it, that I could just as well ask for a kilometer of olives as, however many, I don't know, grams or liters or whatever. So that is, I spent probably a year or more describing how much I want of something, to avoid trying to figure out what that would be in the metric system, like, or as I would say, what that is in English. I mean, so I go up and I say, can I have enough for 2 people for lunch, or for 4 people for dinner, so that then I just give me whatever. But, I need to get on board with it. So I've begun to use that eavesdropping as a little bit of an education on how much 250 grams of mushrooms really looks like. But it's been extremely difficult, because there's, also meters, there's distances, weights, all the whole weights and measures thing is just confounding to me. And aside from that, another thing that I mentioned in that, it's not just that, it's that, like, all the, I didn't go deep in all these years of studying French. I can't remember a lesson where they said, okay, now we're going to learn all the different varieties of fish in French. What's haddock, what's sole. That never happened. Aside from the fact that there's different stuff here, like there are different birds here than there are in the US. There's different plants, there's different fish, there's different cuts of meat. I don't know what any of the fish are. I know like the word for fish, the word for tuna, the word for salmon, that's pretty much gotten me through life in France. But when, you want to spread your wings a little bit and try something new, um, you're trying to always look up in the dictionary what that is in English.
Mhm.
So I've been working on the fish now. I'm kind of feeling a little more confident with Celsius and grams and
Well, yeah,
liters and
yeah. Well, I want to go back to fish because I had a funny experience. I was at Port Vendre, and me and a friend were having lunch there, and so there was, of course, a lot of seafood there. And the one of the specials was the loup,
mhm,
Loup. And
mhm, mhm.
I'm like, I want, and that's wolf, right? So I'm
Right.
like, oh, I'll have the wolf,
Right,
and
right.
right, and knowing it was a type of fish, but I wasn't sure what kind of fish. I believe it's sea bass, something like that. I don't know. Anyway, I mean, it's things like that you just don't know, and it can be scary to try something new. So to stick to the same thing, I can understand that. So, but you have ventured out and tried new things.
I have, but I've also figured out that it just feels too like I don't translate French in my head into English when I speak French. That's part of
Mhm.
becoming fluent in French. You don't stop and say, "Oh, that word means this." You just you've
It just
absorbed
is.
it.
Yep. Mhm.
I've decided to try that with temperature and measurements and the kinds of fish. So I don't know anymore what le jaune is. I don't know what it is, but I
Mhm.
know that I like how it tastes and I
Yeah.
know how to make it.
And that's what
And
matters,
I've
right?
decided to just let go. Let go. I don't have to know what that is I don't have to know what everything is in English or pounds or ounces. I can
Mhm.
just go like this much is 100 grams.
Mhm.
Fine. This fish is good on the grill. Good. Whatever it is, I don't
Mhm.
know.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know.
I like that idea because really at the end of the day, that's that's what you need to know. Do I like it? Does it taste good? Is it gonna be enough, for to feed,
Mhm.
you and your husband? And I think that I liked what you shared in the blog post about how you're dealing with, was it Celsius or it was something you changed something to
Yes. Well, I've changed I walk a lot every morning for exercise, and I've changed from recording miles to recording kilometers so I can
Mhm,
get a feel for how long a kilometer is.
mhm,
And I my weather app is in Celsius.
mhm,
So,
mhm,
I don't necessarily have to know exactly what 13 degrees is, but I
mhm.
do know that I need a jacket. Do you know
Yeah,
what I mean? Like I
yeah.
know what it feels like. I,
Mhm,
you know,
mhm.
what in the low 50s or whatever feels like. So I don't need to translate it all the time. And
Yeah.
this has been really difficult. This has been a challenge because um, the only other thing that I think was scarier was when I traded in my American driver's license for a French one. And to do
Mhm.
that, you have to give up your American license and you have, like in an envelope, hovering over the mailbox when you're thinking, "Oh my God, I'm giving up my," and this is kind of in that same vein. I'm thinking, I have to give up Fahrenheit. I just have to let it go
Mhm.
because what am I live here now and I need to get with the program here
Yeah,
and
and I
not
think that
keep
I
yeah.
think that is so smart to do. I have not yet flipped the switch with Celsius. I do the mental calculation. Okay, it's 2 times the degrees in Celsius plus 30 or 32
Yeah.
to right? But I really don't need that, right? I really just need to know, do I need a coat? You know
You
you
know,
know,
yeah,
those sorts
that's
of things.
right.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah,
And so I think that's good. I think that's good for people to hear. I mean, as you develop, your new life in your new country, that's a part of it. It's a
yeah,
letting go and adopting. And I think when I talk about learning, French or learning any language, it's an agreement that you have, right? You're agreeing that this word means this
that's right.
thing, right? And
That's
so
right.
by my not saying switching it into Fahrenheit, I'm not agreeing. It's a
That's
there's a
right. That's
it's a
right.
little bit of a conflict. So So I
Mhm,
like what you're
mhm.
doing with that. So before we go on, I don't want to cut you off. Before we go on, we have some comments here. Um, we have Junket 3000 who says, yes, it does, about the markets. I'm terrified of touching the produce when I'm at a market. I need to be totally clear before I touch or I watch people. Yes. I think I was yelled at once too. Like,
Mm.
excuse me. um, and then let's see what else this says. I went to a vendor who marked down the cost of sardines from 2 kilograms for 10 euros to 3
That's
kilograms. When they started to put it in the bag, I was flabbergasted. We
no
had
good.
fish breakfast, lunch, and dinner for days.
That's
Yeah.
that's kind of how the kilometers of olives happened. It was during a visit to Paris, and I got carried away and didn't know what the measurement was, and we had olives with breakfast, lunch, and dinner for days because we
Mhm.
bought a kilometer.
Thanks for sharing, Junket 3000. That's great. And Karen just joined us. Bonjour. All right. So we were talking about the metric system and just kind of flipping that switch and just adopting and how, now that you've done that with your tracker into kilometers, and you've decided, okay, I don't really need to know what this is in English. How how has that changed your experience or made you feel since you've done that?
It made me not feel as foreign or as lost because
Mhm.
when you think about it, that French people don't know what that fish is in like the loo. They don't know what that is in
Mhm.
English. They're fine with that.
Mhm.
Um, it makes me feel like I'm integrating much more,
Yeah. Yeah.
and makes me less frustrated. And I don't feel quite. I mean, I don't see a way of not feeling other here, but I don't feel quite as much like that
Mhm.
when
Yeah,
I
and
just
I
say,
think
"All
that's
right,
important.
I'm going to play by their rules,"
Mhm.
you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, the agreement, right? Yeah, I
Yeah.
love that, I love that. I have a friend who's American, she's 27, 28. And I was visiting her and her husband, and she was talking about the temperature, and she said it in Celsius, and I'm like, "What?" A couple of days ago, you were saying Fahrenheit. What's with that? But it makes sense. But I think the other piece of it, I think that she's picked up the French more quickly than I have. I think she's just flipped the switch more quickly because I think youth may have something to do with that.
Yeah, it just might. A younger brain. Right,
It's
exactly.
like, okay, we're doing this that today. Okay.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
so let's move on to another topic that you talk about. And your article, your blog is entitled The French Press.
Mm-hmm.
This is a topic that is near and dear to my heart. I've
Mm-hmm.
spoken about this in several of my videos. But what is the French press, Theresa?
It is, I would say, a miscommunication on the appropriateness of personal space, or a difference, anyway. Um, my experience here, and this really kind of jazzed up my the Philly girl in me, because, you know, don't get all crawling up in my back when you're in line. And they crawl up your back in line. The French people have, my experience, the thing that really got me was, the big refrigerator cases, and I'm telling you, they all, you know, it goes for miles. It's just yogurt. And I'm a little overwhelmed by the yogurt, I have to admit. There's just so much to choose from. And I'm standing outside of the one, and I'm like, yeah, that's the one I want. And I'm standing outside of it, and I go to open that door, and some lady comes sliding in from the right. She says, excusez-moi, because they're very polite, but she's sliding in, grabs the yogurt, right, and just goes about her merry way. And I'm like, first of all, hello, I'm here, and like, get
Yo.
off, yo, yo, who do you think you're pushing around? And I was stunned. And it happened again with cheese. And really, I needed this one kind of cheese. I was making a recipe, and don't you know, she took the last one. And then I decided, I'm really frustrated. I'm decided, you know, my personality has changed a little bit since I've been here because I'm not exactly myself in French. I can't tell, like, my humor's not the same if it exists at all. Like, I'm not the same boisterous kind of personality. I'm a little more subdued and shy, I guess. So I didn't say anything for a beginning, and then I like had a little pep talk with myself, going like, you don't let these French people push you out of the freezer section. So the next time it happened, I went to my first go-to, which is sarcasm, which is hard to pull off in a second language. But I said to some guy, "Oh, you go ahead because obviously you're more important than I am." And there was a look on his face like almost like, yeah, I guess I am. And he went about his, he didn't go like, "Oh no, I'm not. Oh, I'm sorry." No, he just was like, "Yeah." And then he took his stuff. And I tried, you go first kind of thing. Didn't really hit home. And finally, I said to some guy, "No, I was here first. I'm standing here picking my thing. You wait." And he looked at me like I was crazy, but he waited. Um, and then I realized, and I think, one of your videos also really struck the chord with me. Their reactions to my being taken aback were odd. I thought they weren't defensive. They were kind of like, I guess I'm more important. And I realized that it's because they have no idea that they were offending me or getting into my space, because their idea of personal space is completely different. Look at the size of their elevators in those old buildings. You're butt to butt with somebody, and they have smaller houses than we do and smaller closets. And I think they just have a different idea of what's appropriate and inappropriate in a spatial kind of personal space way. So they weren't being rude, they were just being themselves.
Yeah.
Now, that understanding was enlightening to me, and it helps with culture shock, but I'm still not over it. Like, I still don't want you climbing up my butt in line. I just, so I'm still dealing with the discomfort of it, but at least I understand it a little better.
Yeah, I think exactly that for me. And for a long time for me, like in the beginning, it was, oh, why is this person so close to me in line? And it was a novelty. It wasn't something that really irked me. When it really started to irk me was after the COVID restrictions were relaxed and we weren't social distancing anymore. And I'd had that space, during it's like, oh, this is good. I got a little more space here now. When that went away, I felt like something was taken away from me. And that's when it started to irritate me. And then I had that aha. I think the video that you're talking about is where I was listening to an Abraham Hicks video, law of attraction video. And the woman was asking a question saying, well, why is it all of the time that I'm seeing somebody spit every time they're in the street? Every time I turn just at the exact moment when this person is spitting. So Abraham asked, well, why does that bother you so? What is the thing that is bothering you about that? And she said, well, I think it's rude, right? It's disrespectful. And just flashed in my mind that personal space, not having that felt rude, felt disrespectful. And then she went through how to kind of just, disassociate that with that. And so now that's how I deal with it. It's still a little bit of a preparation as I go into the store, right? I'm recognizing that, okay, I need to be relaxed about this and recognize that it's not rude. So I'm still working through it, but definitely going to the supermarket is so much more pleasant now that I don't feel like somebody's disrespecting me.
Yeah. Yeah. It's good once you understand that there's a cultural issue. And they're not just being jerks.
Yeah. I'm going to put this question on here. I don't know if you'll be able to answer it. I don't know if I can answer it, but Igami says, generally, what sort of things do French people tend to consider rude? Do you want to take that? You want me to start?
Well, I would love your input too, but the first thing that comes to mind is if you don't say bonjour first thing. You know,
and sometimes bonjour, madame. Right?
Yeah, that's right. And like I say to people, if you are terribly injured and need an ambulance, say bonjour before you yell help, because
Because you're not going to get the ambulance.
I mean, you know, and it's funny because there's so much to learn. Like you have to say bonjour to people when you walk into the doctor's waiting room or the dentist's waiting room. And there's these, you know, into an elevator, out of an elevator, you know, in my courtyard, I have to bonjour. But if I see that person outside the my courtyard, I don't have to bonjour. Like there's all these rules, you know, and they consider it rude and disrespectful if you don't do that. And also if you don't say, you know, thank you, have a nice day, goodbye. You know, those you just say, you know, merci, au revoir, bonne journée. Like, you know, so I think they think that's rude. I tend to think, I think this might be getting to be an old trope, but there's a lot of talk that people think that Americans are rude because they talk loud at restaurants. And I'm saying that I think that's changed because, and I invite anyone who disagrees with me that the French are not loud to come to my apartment at midnight on Friday or Saturday, and let's listen to the people who aren't just laughing, but drinking. They sing a lot when they drink, and sometimes they play drums. So I mean, the French can be very loud. So I think that that's not a current issue. What else? Do you have any other thoughts?
Well, so I was going to say the bonjour thing. I know that I went to my first year here. I went to a Halloween party. A friend of mine was having a Halloween party. A French friend of mine was having a Halloween party, and there were a lot of people there. And when it was time to go, it took me 20 minutes to leave because I had to go around to everybody and say goodbye to everybody.
Yeah,
whereas in the US, I'd be like, bye.
Or you just ghost them and leave, but you cannot do that. Yeah.
So yeah,
I think also it's not good etiquette. It's to not, if you're invited to someone's house for apéro or for dinner and apéro, that you should spend an adequate amount of time in that like cocktail hour. That you can't just have a quick drink or skip the drink and just go to the table, no matter how much you want to, because otherwise you are not getting out of there till midnight, at least, you know. But I think that's all part of the process that needs to be done.
One other question, and then we'll get back onto the topic, the next topic. How do you physically, and this is the ABX girl, how do you physically feel being in France due to your health? The ingredients in all the foods in the US is horrible, up to 70% ultra processed. So do you notice a difference in how you feel because
I absolutely do. We never ate a whole lot of processed food to begin with, but you're right. There seems to be more ingredients that are not permitted to be in food here. And the whole idea of buying fresh, eating it, you know, when it's fresh, has really changed a lot. The way that I shop has changed. So I never throw food out. I don't have it long enough. I go through it. I only buy what I need. And that is different in terms of waste, and people here are very conscious about waste. We don't have a car. I walk everywhere. So, and like, you know, my one supermarket's like 10 minutes away, but the one that's really good is like 20 or 25 minutes away. So, you know, you end up walking everywhere, which is good for your health. But I don't want you to, if you go into a French supermarket, the candy aisle is humongous. And I'm not just talking about fine chocolates. I'm talking about every variety of like gummy bear, sour patchy, Haribo, like that candy that I think French people grew up eating and still eat. The cookie aisle is huge. I mean, there's plenty of processed food here. It's funny because I think, you know, being a Weight Watchers devotee, there's a lot of, you know, recipes for making things like, you know, cheesecake pudding, where you use powdered peanut butter and sugar-free pudding mix. You can't even get that stuff in a supermarket here. So, you know, there is that. There's a lot of stuff that's not here, but they have their share of junk food.
Yes. So good question. So I want to kind of shift gears a little bit, and I'm going to get back here. I'm going to shift gears here and talk about banking.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Well,
did you want to just take it away? Go ahead.
Yeah, this was
you got some thoughts on this.
this got a lot of reaction. This post, I think, largely because it was unusual and interesting to learn about how different it is here, but also I think a lot of people who are considered moving here or have moved here have tremendous amount of trouble getting a bank account, which is like a catch-22, because you can't rent an apartment without a bank account because they withdraw your rent directly, you know, direct withdrawal from your bank account. But you can't get a bank account without having an address. And also, the big thing about it, though, is there are very few French banks who will work with or have Americans as clients, because there's this reporting system to the U.S. government called FATCA that requires the banks to report when you go over $10,000 in your bank account, and they have all this documentation that they have to do and give to the United States government. And the reason the U.S. government has that is because they want to make sure that they want to crack down on money laundering. So it's extremely difficult to get a bank account. What we did at the suggestion of our lawyer was to kind of go through the back door. And before we moved here, we found the one bank that has this, I don't know of another one that has a department for accounts for foreigners. So we opened a bank account with BNP Paribas as foreigners. And we brought our whole dossier. We were here in Paris. We brought the whole dossier. We had an hour-and-a-half meeting. We went through everything. And dossiers, you have to have all these documents for everything you do, renting an apartment, opening a bank account, whatever. And we did that. And then we went home to the US, and about 3 months later, we didn't get word. And I contacted the guy, and he wasn't writing back to me. And then I contacted somebody else, and oh, well, he doesn't work here anymore, and we don't have any information from you. So we had to start the whole thing all over again, which was a nightmare. But we finally got our bank account. And then when we moved here, we just changed branches. We changed from foreigners to being residents, and we changed branches, and we got a bank account. But the bank accounts are different. Like, I thought, well, you know, I'm going to go into the bank and I'm going to say, I got money, want it? And they'll go like, yeah. But that does not happen here. They go like, no, we don't want you. Like, you really have to talk them into it. And after we did that, then we learned that, for instance, you know, your debit card, which is what everybody uses for everything, has limits on it. You can only withdraw so much money every 30 days, you can only pay people so much money every 30 days. You can get more leeway, but you have to ask the bank's permission. And if you want a regular credit card like we're familiar with, you need to be using your United States credit card. But then to have a US credit card with some banks and to have US accounts with some banks, not all, you have to have the US address. So a lot of people get around that by using a family member's address in the US. We didn't want to do that. And we wanted to be able to find a bank in the US where we could say, we're living in France, is that cool with you? And they go like, yeah. So we did find that. And, they have even sent, renewable credit cards here to France. So they're cool with that because those credit cards don't really exist here. You get your bank debit card and you don't get 14% APR, $50,000 limit with points for travel. No, the French don't have that because the French government doesn't want all their citizens to get into deep debt.
Yeah.
So you use a debit card all the time or a check.
Yeah. I was at the dentist a couple months ago and I wanted to pay, well, and this is just even with just, I wouldn't have been able to even use, I think, well, maybe I would have been able to use my debit card, but the credit card I couldn't use, and he'd rather take a check, right? So I'm like, oh, okay. So it's that sort of thing, those sorts of differences. And I remember I was at a restaurant with somebody I was dating at the time, and we had our dinner. We had a good dinner, 60 euro dinner. And then, when it was time to pay, he pulled out his debit card and they're like, oh no, we just take cash. So both of us walked away from that meal. Like we could have walked away and not come back, but had to go to an ATM to get cash. So, and that really startled me because it's a restaurant and you would think that a certain amount over a certain amount, you wouldn't be carrying, a ton of cash, but that was something that happened. So it is different. I have a question about how you set this bank account up. So when you were in France, you went to a branch of the BNP Party?
Right. I went, I went to a branch there. They have a department and they have it in Paris for bank for les comptes des étrangers, for foreigners. And you can open a bank account as a foreigner there. There's no law against an American having a bank account there. So we just opened it as foreigners because we didn't want to have to go through the hassle. We wanted to have it already in place because, they do things a little bit differently here. When you give your landlord or the company that manages your apartment building your IBAN, your identification number.
All right. You're going to have to explain that, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's a French bank identification number that you kind of make somebody a beneficiary, and they have your number, so they can take your rent out. You have to approve that. They can't just willy-nilly take stuff out of your bank account. But that's how we pay our electric bill. When I take French lessons or something, somebody will give me their IBAN number. I create a beneficiary and I can pay them directly bank to bank. So, that's necessary to have before you can do anything like get an apartment. So I wanted to make sure that was in place. And then all we had to do when we came here and became residents was show proof of residence, which is, what the French are like 3 months worth of electric bills. And then we were able to switch our account to a residence, a French residence account.
Thanks for clarifying that, because I know that has been a question people have asked in the past, and I just wanted to get clarification on it. Yagami has a question about something you said. Which banks in the U.S. are okay with residency in France?
Our PNC Bank.
Okay, so it's Philadelphia.
Local bank, and we have another local bank that I think it's just in Philadelphia, Key Bank. Our Chase credit card is fine with it, and our American Express, but that's not taken everywhere.
It's not, yeah. I got an American Express and can't use it.
And there is a there's a U.S. I think you know, when they have the bank accounts that are for people in the military and things like that, there's one of those
Yes.
that, and I'm forgetting the name on it,
Yes.
which I didn't look into it. There's one of those that has bank accounts for, I mean, some of the people they deal with are people who are in foreign service over here.
Yep.
So they
USAA, that's it. Thank you. Yes, thank you.
And they will open a bank account for you even if you have a French address. The thing is, like, my husband's on Social Security. His Social Security will deposit your Social Security into a French bank in euros. So, you know, that helps. Our pension will not. So we need to maintain an American bank account where we get the pension, and then we have to transfer the funds here to France. So finances gets really complicated. Also, if you have investment accounts, you can't buy and sell mutual funds if you live in France. You can't do that in the U.S. And you know, our financial advisor wouldn't work with this as French.
Yeah, I had to change mine too. Yeah,
I have to change all that stuff. So it's kind of a little confusing.
Oh, great question. Thank you, Igami. For me, I just want to share my experience with the bank account. I got a bank account. I was taking French language classes at a school, and my classmate, he had gotten a bank account. He was Russian, and he had gotten a bank account by asking the receptionist there, you know, well, how do I get a bank account? And she said, oh, well, I know somebody at the bank I can call. And she set up the appointment. And so he said, oh, you need to get a bank account, and this is what you do. This is how you do it. And so she set up the appointment for me. And then what I needed, I went and they said, oh, well, we need your landlord's, you know, carte d'identité, his ID card, so that we can make sure that, you know, you are who you are, and he's kind of vouching for you. And so I asked, and my first landlord was very nice, and he said, sure. He made a copy of that. I don't know if I needed anything else, but I went and had the appointment, and that's how my bank account got set up. Now, it's weird because I bank with CIC, and I opened my bank account in Perpignan. Now I'm in Serres, which has a branch here, but I can't do certain things here at the branch here because, well, the branch I opened it at is in Perpignan. And when I tried to have that changed, for whatever reason, the woman said, oh no, you stay with us. So that was it was a little bit different, because in the US, you know, there are branches, and you can go to any branch and take care of business.
Yeah. And you think, just like in the US, you go in, you open an account, they give you a pen and a canvas bag with their name on it. They don't do that here. They'll likely tell you no. C'est impossible. It's impossible.
Yeah. And I will say, I had the first couple of years here, I wasn't working. And so I didn't have any money coming into my account regularly. So I had this bank account, which is what I needed, because you need it for, you know, to pay bills, you know, have them, you know, do the IBAN, but also the REIB, you know, for your cell phone plan or whatever, so that they can take the money out. And so I didn't really have any regular money coming in. And so when I don't know why I had to go into the branch or what I needed to do. But when I told him my name and he pulled up my account, he's like, this isn't a real account, right? I'm like, well, sure it is. I'm using it. It's like, yeah, but it doesn't look like anything he's seeing, because most people have direct deposit or whatever,
right,
or things going out regularly. And that wasn't me. And so I felt I felt foreign. I was like, And when I started to get respect with the bank was when I created my business. And that's when the woman in Perpignan said, no, you stay with us.
Oh, okay. Right.
Yeah. So that was my experience at the bank. Anything else about, banking you want to share before we're almost out of time?
Well, I just, the thing is, like you talked about, well, they would take a check. I don't do that like just off the top of my head because
Oh,
I
yes.
really do have to look it up on the internet every time how to fill out a French check because you're going to think it's going to be just like United States check, but it is not. And there's
Mhm.
stuff like where, like like or
Mhm.
I don't know, like de, but I forget how they put it. Where, what was that for? Oh, that's where you were when you wrote
When
the
you,
check.
yeah. Not where you are when
What's
you hand it to them, was where you
No,
are
where
when you.
you were when you wrote it, like that kind of stuff. So I'm embarrassed. I can't pay for my rest. You could pay a check at a restaurant, but I'm not going to do it because I'd have to say, wait a minute, or could you help me fill out the check? It's all different.
Well, I think it's funny. You said you have to Google it every time. The first several times I wrote a check, I had to go. I went to YouTube, and there was a video about how to fill out a French check, and a little girl was talking me through it. I was
Oh,
like,
that little whippersnapper,
but
snapper.
now I'm good. Now I'm good.
Yeah,
But in the
yeah.
beginning,
Uh-huh.
we got one more question. Here we go from Maya. Do you drive a lot less than when you lived in the US? I do.
Absolutely. We don't even own a car, so
Mhm.
um,
Well, so
we
you do.
absolutely. Yeah, I drive a lot less. That was one of the motivating factors. One of the things that was important to us was we both really wanted to stop driving. It felt so aggressive in the United States. And we have this great system here, and they have it in a lot of French cities. It's called Cities Car, where it's like a car share thing. A join basically. And if we need to go to IKEA or someplace and bring something back, we can rent a car. um, Mostly, though, we can get it almost anywhere we need to go on foot or by metro or train or bus.
Mhm.
Um, but if there's some place we want to go, like some places on the coast of Brittany that we like to go to,
Mhm.
you have to rent a car. We can easily get a car if we need it, but I'm so happy. And my husband, because he's always like calculating, like we've saved so much money because we each had a car. We had car insurance, gas, maintenance. It's
Mhm.
wonderful.
Yeah, yeah. I drive a lot less. I got well. Let me stop because I had this question for you. How large is Rennes? What's the population?
About 250,000.
Okay, yeah. So
Yeah.
it's
So it's
big.
a
It's
big,
not
it's a biggish
it's not
city.
8,000 people.
No, no, it's a bigger city. So we have, I think we have the second largest metro, or maybe not this, I forget, but we have a good size
Mhm.
metro. Oh no, we're the smallest French city with a metro. That's what it is. So
Mhm.
we have really good transportation, and it's really walkable. My husband rides a bike a lot places, so it's
Mhm.
easier to, if you don't want to drive, it's easy. You need to be in a city. If you're out, if it's more
Mhm.
rural, small village, you need a car. You just do.
Yeah, because for me, so I'm in an 8,000 person village, right?
Yeah.
250,000 to 8,000.
Right, right.
And the first 6 months I was here, I had it in my mind that, yeah, I was going to get a car, but I was afraid. I was afraid to save the insurance and going to the car
Mm-hmm.
dealership, all of that. So I put it off for the first 6 months until a friend of mine, she visited and she rented a car. And so we tooled around in that little red car that she rented. And I'm like, oh, I got to do this. This feels
Mm-hmm.
good.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
In addition, we have bus service here. We don't have a train that comes here. So I can walk to the store. There's many things I can do. But if I want to go to a concert in
Yeah.
Perpignan, I can't do that unless I'm going to get a hotel or stay at my friend's house or get because the bus
Right.
service ends so
Yeah.
early. So it depends really, if you don't want a car, then you're going to need to
Right.
be in a place that has a good enough, public transit system.
Right. And France is really, I mean, there are a lot of bike lanes here, like a lot. You know, it's walkable. It's a lot of the city is focused on making sure it's bikeable and walkable. I do have to say that I don't wear as many different kinds of shoes as I used to in the US. I mean, I wear sneakers with decent soles because we have cobblestones and it kind of gets to you all that walking on cobblestones, but it's worth it.
Yeah,
Health-wise
absolutely.
even. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So, yes, we drive a lot less. And I think another reason I drive less is I don't enjoy it so much here because the roads are more narrow. I feel like I'm comfortable if I have to drive somewhere, it's not like, oh, I got to get my courage up, like in the beginning, but it's just not that pleasant. So I make sure that if
Yeah.
I'm going to drive, I'm going to do this, and this when I'm in the car. And then, maybe I drive once, maybe twice a week sometimes. And that's it,
Yeah.
So yeah. And that feels good. All right. Well, Theresa, thank you so much for joining us today. If you enjoyed that and you would like to read more about her experiences and what like life in France is like through her eye, through her and her husband's eyes, be sure to subscribe to Yo France. .substack.com so you can do you publish, is it weekly?
We're pretty much we're not that strict with it, but we pretty much have a new blog every week.
Yeah, and it's well, you heard her. she's hilarious.
We have a lot of fun.
Yeah. I want to just share with you, if you are interested in making a move to France or to any other European country, and you've been thinking about it, and the thing that trips you up, and you've been doing your research, and the thing that trips you up time after time is finding that confidence and courage to actually make the move, even though you want to, then I'd love to have a conversation with you. So you can have that conversation with me by going to thecouragecatalyst.com/future expat. And you can learn more about my program. You can learn more about my one-on-one coaching, and I look forward to that. All right. So if you're stuck and you want to get unstuck, let's talk. All right. So any parting thoughts, Theresa?
Well, can I jump on that? And I want to say that the way I first met Patricia was because I worked with her even before I moved. And it was really an interesting process, and it helped me immensely. I wasn't as concerned about some of the nuts and bolts as dealing with my fears. This is a scary thing. And I thank you all the time in my head, because you gave me the confidence and the courage to go for it.
And look at you 2 years later.
Yeah. I'm working the marché 2 years
Yeah, you
later.
turn in French. Thank you so much. Yeah, I think that definitely I see the evolution, right? From I really want this thing, but certain things, letting go of certain things, and thinking about, well, what if this and what if that, and now like you got your blog, you're doing this video, you've really hit your stride. So I'm really
thanks to
happy for
you.
All right. I want to thank everybody else who has joined today and commented. We really enjoyed you being here and asking those questions. And I will see you again for the next live. All right. Take care. Bye-bye for now.